The high school student Seo Mok-ha made a music video recording of herself performing before entering the singing competition. That moment turned into amazement for Mok-ha when Ran-joo proved to be the famous singer who listened to her entry. Mok-ha became ecstatic because she felt the music industry would soon welcome her and grant her singer status. The journey that lay ahead of her was filled with numerous difficulties. Mok-ha desperately attempted to borrow a phone from her classmates before she could join the radio program, which offered her the opportunity to perform next to Ran-joo. The performance start time arrived while her mobile device ran out of battery power. Kang Bo-geol possessed the only battery that worked with her cell phone. When Bo-geol first asked for payment, Mok-ha revealed her desperation led him to give her the phone battery without any cost. When Mok-ha reached the radio program, she was able to join, but her intense emotions caused Bo-geol to disconnect the call, making her frustrated. She convinced Bo-geol to record her performance because she did not have access to a camera. Bo-geol made no initial reaction to Mok-ha at first, but later developed an interest in her singing abilities. He spent the entire night editing the video because he wanted to present it to her as soon as possible the following day. The school day saw Mok-ha missing her classes. Bo-geol grew worried and decided to visit Mok-ha at her house, where he encountered her along with her father and police officers. The officer, Bo-geol's father, did not take seriously her accusation of her father's abusive behavior, while Mok-ha had made the report to police. The police officer, who was Bo-geol's father, failed to recognize Mok-ha's claims as truthful and forced her instead to return home with her father. Feeling unsupported, Mok-ha apologized insincerely. The edited video, which Bo-geol showed Mok-ha during nighttime, was rejected by her. During Ran-joo's television appearance, Mok-ha revealed her lifelong admiration for Ran-joo, which turned out to be someone who shared their small island, then aimed to escape for broader opportunities. Inspired, Bo-geol secretly uploaded Mok-ha's video to the Audition website, providing his contact information. Days later, the music company contacted Bo-geol, informing him that Ran-joo, serving as a judge, had selected Mok-ha's audition. However, when Bo-geol relayed the news, Mok-ha expressed disinterest in singing, feeling the need to mature and remain with her father. In class, Mok-ha attempted to collect volunteer sign-up forms, but her classmates ignored her. Frustrated, she burst into tears, prompting them to comply, albeit without understanding her distress. Bo-geol empathized, recognizing her tears stemmed from a desire to sing and achieve fame to protect herself from further harm. After school, Bo-geol gave Mok-ha a hand-drawn map to his house, offering her refuge if her father mistreated her again. He promised to accompany her to Seoul to pursue her dreams. That night, fearing her father's intentions, Mok-ha followed the map to Bo-geol's home. Prepared for their escape, Bo-geol provided her with essentials and guided her to the docks, having informed the music company of their plan. They spent their time at the ferry dock planning for their life ahead. Mok-ha dedicated himself to becoming a singer, as he promised to support Bo-geol after boarding the ferry, while they watched her father drive towards them in his vehicle. The only way for Bo-geol to stay free was leaving the ferry, so she ordered Mok-ha to block out every person from the island, especially him from his memory. He stopped her father in an attempt to hold him back. While on the ferry, Mok-ha found Bo-geol's notebook containing his schemes, as he understood how much they had in common. A moment later, her father arrived on the ferry, so Mok-ha chose to risk her life by jumping into the sea to escape his presence. The music company representatives became furious when Mok-ha failed to show up at the arranged meeting. The hospitalization of Bo-geol revealed to him that Mok-ha had jumped from the ferry. The search in heavy fog proved unsuccessful because she remained missing. After his despair, Bo-geol freed the fish from the tank where he lived to express his desire for her liberation. Mok-ha found survival by being rescued when she washed up on a solitary island. The island newcomer learned how to survive and find adequate resources in her unfamiliar habitat. During the following 15 years, Bo-geol returned to the Aegis train station in Seoul multiple times, but Mok-ha never materialized. Mok-ha used her wits to sustain herself on the island as she built pits for rain collection and gathered food sources. During a volunteer mission on the island, Bo-geol operated his drone when he stumbled upon Mok-ha still alive. After being startled, Mok-ha chose to follow the drone, which she engaged during their interactions. When Woo-hak encountered another person during his visit, he felt startled. After observing her, Mok-ha experienced relief because she finally received rescue after spends a long 15 years isolated. The two brothers transported Mok-ha from the isolated island to live in an inhabited area. Her discovery of contemporary world enabled her to find happiness in ordinary delights such as kimbap and cell phones. Woo-hak started making a record of her story because he recognized it had value to the news. Mok-ha kept the habits of a 16-year-old despite her 31 years of age because she had lived alone since she turned 16. Woo-hak decided to accompany Mok-ha to her home island in order to unravel more details about her past. Along the way, Mok-ha spotted a billboard featuring Ran-joo, who was scheduled to perform at a village anniversary celebration. Woo-hak speculated that Mok-ha had been a devoted fan who, in her quest to meet her idol, became stranded on the deserted island. Upon reaching her former home, they discovered it had been converted into a small store by a local resident. When Seo Mok-ha tells the store owner who she is, he immediately assumes she has come to reclaim her childhood home. Suspicious of her motives, he orders her to leave. However, Kang Woo-hak, well-versed in legal matters, steps in to defend Mok-ha, countering the owner's accusations with logic. The argument ends with the store owner silenced, but his expression turns bitter when Mok-ha asks about Kang Bo-geol. At the mention of Bo-geol's name, the man's anger flares. He informs the audience that Bo-geol changed completely after Mok-ha disappeared. He passed each day at the seaside looking toward the ocean, rather than attending classes. The teenager ended his time at home to permanently abandon his father behind. Before vanishing, Bo-geol exposed his abusive father to the authorities for the mistreatment he had received over many years. The police dismissed his father from duty because of this incident. During those vanished years, the disgraced police officer persisted in his hunt for his lost son without any success. No one could locate Bo-geol to determine his survival or whether he remained alive. The old house of Bo-geol draws Mok-ha to its location because she needs answers regarding his fate. While walking through the dilapidated structure, Mok-ha comes across a tiny message holding the words she remembers well. When you strongly want something, it will appear to you in unexpected ways. Bo-geol often repeated this phrase to her in the past. Through the note, Mok-ha achieves absolute belief that her son, Bo-geol, still exists despite the past events. The person she loves seems to await her somewhere exactly like how she has waited for him. The total devotion shown by Mok-ha to her missing boyfriend creates confusion for Woo-hak. He questions why she cherishes Bo-geol, since she became shipwrecked because of him. But Mok-ha shakes her head. Her gratitude towards him supersedes any blaming sentiments she could have towards him. Bo-geol rescued her from a life of suffering, since she remains alive because of him. She tells Woo-hak that the pair escaped their homes to live instead of seeking fame through running away. Being about to return to Seoul, Mok-ha asks him for assistance. The 15 years she spent isolated on a desolate island drive her to never return to her birthplace. She still wants to follow her original plan, to reach Seoul, meet her idol, and fulfill her dream. If she doesn't, everything she endured would have been meaningless. Ran-joo's life changed dramatically according to Woo-hak when she returned from prison, since her addiction and diminishing popularity made her a shell of her former self. But Mok-ha isn't discouraged. Ran-joo's hardships previously detected by Mok-ha when she returned from prison do not alter Mok-ha's feelings about her idol. Ran-joo experiences complete turmoil within the backstage area. She received an invitation to perform, yet feels unsure about whether she will deliver a live performance. Ran-joo avoids the performance by starting to drink from a bottle of wine that was gifted to her while using her drunken state as an excuse. After hearing the announcement for backup singer Mok-ha quickly steps forward to provide his services. Before starting the performance, the event organizers tell Ran-joo to disable her microphone so Mok-ha can sing live vocals, since she will serve as the backing singer. When Ran-joo enters the stage, she has no hope for a positive reception. Instead of disappointment, she witnesses a magnificent sight of numerous green balloons rhythmically moving in harmony. She experiences genuine star status for the very first time since the years past. Mok-ha stands behind Ran-joo with 2 green balloons attached to her head and gazing at the star with unreserved appreciation. Mok-ha gives Ran-joo an encouraging nod. Mok-ha begins to sing, her voice clear and powerful. Gradually, Ran-joo joins in, her initial reluctance fading. Their voices blend seamlessly, and when the final note echoes through the air, The crowd erupts into applause. Overwhelmed, Ran-joo breaks down in tears. Mok-ha, too, is overcome with emotion. She has no regrets. This moment was worth everything. Ran-joo embraces Mok-ha, sobbing. Once she had been Korea's most beloved diva. Now, she struggles just to make a living. When she was invited to this festival, she assumed no one would care about her performance. But because of Mok-ha, the event was packed with cheering fans. Mok-ha even rallied her relatives to join in. The performance makes headlines. The internet buzzes with excitement. Wonder whether the legendary singer Ran-joo is preparing to return. Mok-ha is deeply moved. 15 years ago, she recorded a singing video, which she sent to Ran-joo to receive recognition in the industry. Finally, Mok-ha receives an opportunity to listen to Ran-joo's assessment of her singing talent. The revelation brings joy to Ran-joo because she truly believes Mok-ha possesses the best singing ability among all audition artists. The absence of Mok-ha during the audition made Ran-joo so dejected that she selected the second-place candidate. Today, Mok-ha stands where the present singing sensation used to be if their paths had intersected differently at that time. Woo-hak suffers a moment of remorse because of Mok-ha's situation. According to Woo-hak, Bo-geol needs to assume responsibility for Mok-ha's current situation because he should have intervened when Mok-ha's father appeared. Mok-ha pushes him away violently since he wants to redirect the blame to others. Mok-ha made her personal choice by herself, and she holds full independence regarding this decision. Woo-hak recognizes Mok-ha's exceptional talent, which drives him to suggest she uses Ran-joo's connections to launch her singing career as a superstar. But Mok-ha refuses. The worries for her idol's happiness outweigh her professional aspirations, so she avoids burdening Ran-joo. Woo-hak receives a request from Ran-joo to transport her back to Seoul at this moment. Because she has no other options, she intends to share the attic space with Mok-ha. During that evening, Woo-hak accidentally revealed that Mok-ha was staying in the attic. Bo-geol quickly climbs upstairs to discover Mok-ha and Ran-joo delightedly carrying out a song duet. Without further words, Mok-ha notices his presence, after which he exits. Ran-joo marvels at Mok-ha's resilience. The situation on a desert island would have made her lose all hope within a brief time span. Mok-ha reveals that she reached the point of giving up, but the floating coolers broke her momentary despair. Youthful despair made her jump into the ocean on her 6th year, yet a floating cooler interrupted this attempt. Inside was a pack of expired instant noodles. She ate them anyway, and from that moment, she chose to keep waiting. Now, she's finally been rescued. Ran-joo's eyes darken. Quietly, she confesses a secret. Her vocal cords are damaged, but Mok-ha's arrival feels like a second chance. Just like that floating cooler, Mok-ha has brought hope back into her life. Before Ran-joo found herself in such a miserable state, she had once been a top star. Now, however, her former manager, Lee Seon-ju, had risen to power as the president of a music company, while she had become a washed-up singer with no influence. President Lee received a proposal from her after she gathered enough strength to contact him. She planned to use auditions as an excuse to introduce Mok-ha to President Lee. She believed that even if he decided against signing her, Mok-ha would get a chance to start performing on stage through his assistants. When President Lee heard her proposal, he paused to think about what she said. Finally, he agreed. Ran-joo felt thrilled about the outcome of her proposal, while staying ignorant to the presence of Mok-ha and Kang Woo-hak and Kang Bo-geol, who listened from the staircase. Mok-ha avoided bitterness toward Ran-joo because of her actions during their meeting. She showed complete sympathy because she realized how helpless Mok-ha truly was in life. It was heartbreaking. Before attending her audition, Mok-ha anticipated failure since she doubted the opportunity would turn out in her favor. Within his excitement, Ran-joo purchased a celebratory cake. Even though he was aware of the low chances of success, Ran-joo conducted Mok-ha to the company on the next day for her company audition. Mok-ha kept her guitar close as she stood prepared for her performance. President Lee made his entrance into the room just before Mok-ha could start her audition to deliver a brief statement about his lack of available time. Ran-joo tried to defend Mok-ha, yet President Lee did not change his mind about the situation. The company president rejected her musical abilities because of her young age. According to him, youthfulness along with image mattered above all else in this profession, making talent insufficient for past the age limit. Ran-joo defended her position as she refused to move from her standpoint. President Lee presented Mok-ha with a different opportunity to function as Ran-joo's manager instead of pursuing a singing career. She was more concerned for Ran-joo, who was being humiliated by the man who once managed her career. Then, an idea struck her. The previous night, Ran-joo had mentioned an old contract with President Lee. If she sold more than 20 million copies of her album, she would be entitled to half of the company's shares. Holding on to that thought, Mok-ha stepped inside and, to everyone's shock, accepted the role of manager without hesitation. President Lee seemed pleased with the decision, but Ran-joo was left bewildered, struggling to understand why Mok-ha would throw away her dream so easily. Mok-ha explained that she wasn't giving up. She was simply taking a different route. She dragged Woo-hak and Bo-geol back home, and, together, they did the math. Ran-joo only needed to sell 880,000 more copies to reach the 20 million mark. If they could make that happen before the contract expired, President Lee would have no choice but to transfer the shares to her. Once Ran-joo had power within the company, Mok-ha would have a real shot at debuting. With this plan in mind, Ran-joo confronted President Lee during a meeting with investors, reminding him of the contract. Lee, now feeling cornered, warned her that the contract would expire in 6 months. But Ran-joo, unwilling to back down, called him a coward. Though she appeared confident, Ran-joo was riddled with self-doubt. Who would buy her old albums now? Just as she was beginning to despair, Mok-ha rushed in with a breakthrough. Bo-geol, who worked as a producer for a major entertainment company, had secured an invitation for Ran-joo to perform on a popular comeback show. Because of her celebrated performance at the Village Festival, public interest in her had resurfaced. This was her chance to reclaim her status. After hearing the news, Mok-ha rushed to find the best song, which would suit Ran-joo for her stage performance. Through straw-based vocal exercises, she created to assist Ran-joo with vocal strain development. Ran-joo desired Mok-ha to perform the same song he had sung during the festival. He had made a journey to Seoul to search for Ran-joo more than a decade earlier. The snowy evening saw him present Ran-joo with a picture of Mok-ha, before asking for her help in caring for Mok-ha if she appeared one day. Ran-joo had penned a musical appeal as an expression of her deep love because she hoped it would one day reach Mok-ha and lead her home. The moment Bo-geol had requested 15 years ago finally materialized. Throughout that evening, Mok-ha rehearsed the song so her voice reached every corner of their house. Woo-hak and Bo-geol made a stop to hear the melodies which drew them toward the musical sound. Mok-ha accepted his manager duties officially to care for Ran-joo. Through the assistance of Woo-hak and Bo-geol, they finished the preparations for her return appearance on television. The show featured a basic concept, which involved classic musicians performing their timeless hits, but also allowing the audience to evaluate their singing quality at the present. Bo-geol served as the primary point of contact for Mok-ha, since he acted as the show's producer in managing production team responsibilities. The artist informed Mok-ha to obtain both a driving permit and phone soon because having an unlicensed crew member would cause troubles. The harsh manner of communicating made Mok-ha seriously irritated with her supervisor. Woo-hak recognized immediately that Mok-ha would face difficulties when creating her email account because the producer demanded she do so. He explained to Bo-geol that setting up an email required real name verification, an available username, and a complex password with uppercase letters and special characters. Given that Mok-ha had spent 15 years on a deserted island, this would be no simple feat. Later that evening, Woo-hak arrived home to find Mok-ha working at his family's barbershop. She had taken a job there to earn money for a phone. Seeing her hard work, he brought her seaweed rice rolls and the two shared a quiet meal. As they ate, Mok-ha couldn't stop thinking about Bo-geol. Why hadn't he reached out to her yet? Was he even alive? Woo-hak, moved by her persistence, made her a promise. He hated eating alone, so from now on, whenever he needed company, he would call her. She agreed, knowing all too well the loneliness of eating alone. Soon after, the anticipated show commenced as planned. Ran-joo and Mok-ha motivated each other, believing this was their opportunity for a flawless return. The stage was exquisitely arranged, and Ran-joo was astonished by the array of snacks and premium beverages available backstage. Additionally, her performance attire showcased the latest trends, curated by one of the nation's top stylists. An assistant informed her that CEO Lee Seo-jun had personally financed everything. Prior to the performance, Kang Woo-hak mentioned to his brother, Kang Bo-geol, that during the village festivities, there were rumors attributing Ran-joo's vocal loss to a cold. This remark prompted Bo-geol to ponder deeply. He hurried to the stage and observed that Ran-joo was merely testing the microphone, not rehearsing her vocals. Recalling Mok-ha's remarkable singing talent and Ran-joo's previous performances, Bo-geol began to piece together the situation. Meanwhile, Mok-ha discreetly concealed a microphone, just as Ran-joo's former manager entered, inquiring if Mok-ha intended to sing on Ran-joo's behalf once more. Mok-ha denied it, aiming to keep the secret confined. The manager sought further clarification, but Bo-geol's timely arrival diverted his attention. As the show officially commenced, Mok-ha, seizing a moment when everyone was preoccupied, swapped microphones with Ran-joo. Ran-joo, filled with anxiety, urged Mok-ha that surpassing her past self was imperative to reignite their shared dream. Driven by their mutual aspirations, Mok-ha poured her soul into singing from behind the scenes, impersonating Ran-joo. Upon concluding the song, the audience cast their votes. The results revealed that the live performance received a significant majority, indicating that Ran-joo's current singing surpassed her past. Overjoyed, Mok-ha watched as Ran-joo ascended to the stage, continuing to vocalize for her from backstage. The crowd's enthusiastic response signified the dawn of Ran-joo's renewed prominence. After the performance, honoring her prior promise to Mok-ha, Ran-joo addressed the audience, alluding to awaiting a friend, a nod to Mok-ha's conviction that Kang Bo-geol remained out there. Post-performance, Ran-joo invited Mok-ha to the restroom, deeming it the sole place for genuine feedback. Eagerly, Mok-ha anticipated the team's reactions to Ran-joo's act. Everyone lauded Ran-joo's singing, filling Mok-ha with immense happiness. Concurrently, Woo-hak had earlier sent a congratulatory message, pausing his photo shoot to watch the show. Mok-ha's pressing concern was whether Bo-geol had witnessed the performance. After a moment's hesitation, Woo-hak assured Mok-ha that Bo-geol must have seen it. In her imagination, Mok-ha envisioned herself under the spotlight instead of Ran-joo, expressing her desire to reconnect with the boy who once inspired her dreams. Her reverie was interrupted by Bo-geol, who insisted that future live broadcasts adhere strictly to the script, criticizing Ran-joo's unscripted mention of seeking a friend. The following day, Ran-joo received a call informing her that her performance had garnered exceptional ratings, leading to a surge in sales of her accessories. Entertainment news outlets celebrated her successful return, elating both Ran-joo and Mok-ha. However, Ran-joo's joy was short-lived. That evening, during a meeting with CEO Lee, she questioned his recent attentiveness. Lee solemnly confessed his guilt regarding her situation, then revealed a harsh truth. He had ordered the retrieval of all her albums, both digital and physical, making them unavailable for purchase. This move shattered Ran-joo's ambition to sell 20 million albums within 6 months. Simultaneously, Woo-hak received a bouquet with a note suggesting a rendezvous with Mok-ha at a predetermined location, signed by Bo-geol. He promptly informed Mok-ha, who, upon reading the note, was overwhelmed with emotion, realizing Bo-geol had finally heard her sing. That night, Mok-ha hurried to the train station. Meanwhile, Woo-hak experienced a sudden headache, plagued by fragmented memories of a man tormenting him and repeatedly shouting Bo-geol's name. Upon regaining consciousness and seeing his reflection, he grew anxious, questioning the man's identity and his own. Confused, Woo-hak recalled the flowers Mok-ha received and the stranger he encountered previously, leading him to suspect he might be Bo-geol. Distressed, he wept in his car. Mok-ha called him, expressing relief that Bo-geol was evading his father. Woo-hak, seeking answers, followed Bo-geol's father home. Strangely, the surroundings felt familiar to him. When Bo-geol's father illuminated a room, Woo-hak was flooded with fragmented memories, as if he had lived that story. This deepened his suspicion that he might indeed be Bo-geol. Contemplating this, he cried. Mok-ha contacted him, and he began to accept Bo-geol's perspective, finding solace in Bo-geol's successful evasion. Woo-hak, however, desired to report Bo-geol's father to the authorities, but Bo-geol vehemently opposed the idea, promising to protect Mok-ha himself. At that moment, Seo Mok-ha received a call from Ran-joo, who expressed her hope that Mok-ha would attend the wedding ceremony. Mok-ha also shared that she had been Ran-joo's first admirer since the age of 5. Additionally, Ran-joo revealed that President Hwang, who had invited Mok-ha to perform at the wedding, was her former music instructor. Ran-joo reminisced about the past, During her early aspirations to become a singer, President Hwang had sacrificed his teaching career and faced personal hardships, including a separation from his wife, to support her dreams. However, circumstances led Ran-joo to part ways with her mentor. Mok-ha offered to be Ran-joo's makeup artist and steadfast supporter. Moved by this gesture, Mok-ha agreed. As the wedding commenced, Mok-ha made her appearance as promised. Hand in hand with Ran-joo, they ascended the stage and performed together under the radiant lights. During the performance, Mok-ha reflected on President Hwang's unwavering support. Upon concluding the song, Mok-ha bowed deeply, expressing her heartfelt apology to her former mentor, leading to a reconciliation. Ran-joo expressed her gratitude to Mok-ha for fulfilling her lifelong wish of performing together. Meanwhile, Lee Seo-jun, CEO of RJ Entertainment, attempted to negotiate with President Hwang, offering him a director position in his company in exchange for withholding or selling any of Mok-ha's old albums. However, President Hwang declined the proposition. That evening, Ran-joo returned the attire she had borrowed from Song Ha-jong, Woo-hak's mother. She overheard a familiar phrase that Ha-jong often used, which Woo-hak had mentioned was his mother's mantra. Curious, Mok-ha inquired if Ha-jong knew Bo-geol. These observations puzzled Woo-hak, suggesting that Bong-won was attempting to recreate a fragment of his past life. In the living room, Woo-hak was startled to find a family photograph depicting Bong-won, Ha-jong, and two young boys, himself and Bo-geol. This revelation led Woo-hak to realize that Bong-won was their father. At that moment, Bo-geol arrived, and Woo-hak surmised that his brother was privy to the family's secrets. Upon Woo-hak's insistence, Bo-geol recounted their concealed history. During their youth, both brothers endured harsh treatment from their father. In an attempt to escape, Woo-hak secretly took on additional jobs to save money. In the ensuing altercation, Woo-hak was injured while protecting Bo-geol. Upon regaining consciousness, Woo-hak had lost his memory. To shield them from traumatic memories, their mother deliberately changed their names. Determined to protect Mok-ha, Woo-hak provided her with a USB drive containing a video of Bo-geol filming Mok-ha's audition 15 years prior. He informed Mok-ha that he had met Bo-geol, who was now married and leading a fulfilling life. Although grateful, Mok-ha remained suspicious, sensing that Woo-hak was concealing the truth about Bo-geol's identity. Following her victory in the initial show, Ran-joo participated in additional comeback performances, consistently winning with Mok-ha's vocal support. With President Hwang's assistance, Ran-joo's albums repeatedly ascended the charts, redefining her as a legendary singer. She was now merely 40,000 album sales away from achieving her goal of 20 million units sold. The fourth show was approaching, and Ran-joo was surprised to learn that her competitor would be Yoon Mo-rae, the most popular singer under RJ Entertainment. This was part of Lee Seo-jun's strategy to halt Ran-joo's winning streak and prevent her from reaching her sales target. Additionally, the manager insisted that Mo-rae pre-record her performance for the live broadcast, allowing her to lip-sync, thereby ensuring a flawless presentation. Mok-ha objected, deeming it unfair. However, the manager threatened her with a video of Ran-joo's past indiscretion, compelling her to acquiesce. After the meeting, Mok-ha, frustrated, vented her anger. Bo-geol approached her, offering a handkerchief. Mok-ha returned it, expressing that his indifference or comfort made little difference. Ran-joo was questioned by Kang Woo-hak about her lack of support for Seo Mok-ha's rights concerning the manager. Unable to disclose the secret behind Mok-ha's singing, Ran-joo could only hint at undisclosed reasons. Similarly, Kang Bo-geol mentioned he had his own unexplainable motives. That night, Mok-ha had a troubling dream. Upon waking, she noticed hairstyling books and a USB drive from Bo-geol on her table, prompting deep thoughts. Stepping outside, she found Woo-hak listening to Ran-joo's song. As they immersed themselves in the music, Bo-geol watched a video of Mok-ha and Ran-joo singing at a wedding. As the show approached, Ran-joo meditated to alleviate her anxiety about her competitor. A few days prior, a throat examination revealed that, although she had recovered from surgery, hitting high notes remained challenging. Seeing advertisements featuring Yoon Mo-rae flooded Ran-joo with memories. At the twilight of her career, the company heavily invested in Mo-rae, then a new singer. This significant investment marked the beginning of Mo-rae replacing Ran-joo as the company's new star. During rookie auditions that year, despite Ran-joo personally selecting Mo-rae, Mo-rae harbored resentment toward her. Once, Mo-rae wished to use Ran-joo's debut song as her theme, but Ran-joo declined. Later, Ran-joo openly expressed her dissatisfaction. Aware of this, Mo-rae always felt like a substitute for Mok-ha. Unable to swallow her pride, Mo-rae decided to perform Ran-joo's debut song in the competition. As the show neared, Mo-rae's fans gathered in large numbers, while Ran-joo's supporters were few. Nevertheless, Ran-joo stepped out. To greet the crowd, Mo-rae approached and stood beside Ran-joo, highlighting the disparity between their fan bases, deepening Ran-joo's discomfort. Mo-rae emerged victorious, but Ran-joo refused to acknowledge defeat. Instead, she introduced Mok-ha to Mo-rae. Feigning composure, Mo-rae faced Ran-joo's reminder that if Mok-ha hadn't been missing, the current music queen wouldn't be her. Mo-rae challenged Mok-ha, asking if she agreed with Ran-joo. Bravely, Mok-ha acknowledged the difficulty of becoming a pop diva, but also noted Mo-rae's evident nervousness. If Mo-rae were confident, she wouldn't have resorted to pre-recording her performance, avoiding direct competition with Ran-joo. Mok-ha added that if Mo-rae lip-synced and won against Ran-joo, she would concede that even her presence wouldn't have changed the outcome. Mo-rae submitted her pre-recorded track to the organizers. However, the main producer unexpectedly underwent surgery for appendicitis, leaving Bo-geol in charge. In the interest of fairness, Bo-geol altered the rules, requiring both Mo-rae and Ran-joo to perform live. Mo-rae's manager immediately brought up Mok-ha and Ran-joo's past lip-syncing incidents. Bo-geol insisted that this time, Mok-ha shouldn't sing for Ran-joo, promising that if Ran-joo won, Mok-ha would officially debut as a singer. This proposition unsettled Ran-joo. Reclaiming the stage had been arduous, and she didn't want Mok-ha overshadowing her moment. Mok-ha shared an anecdote with Ran-joo about her time on the island. She had a seagull friend, and during a storm that swept away their food supplies, she starved for over 10 days. The strong hunger did not force her to touch the seagull's eggs, because she prioritized her friendship with the seagull. According to Mok-ha's mindset, this demonstrated an oath to her friend that she would never commit theft of her stage at any time, regardless of circumstances. The performance scared Mo-rae because releasing Mok-ha to perform would unlock the path toward her professional debut. The company president provided reassurance to Mo-rae that such an outcome was impossible to occur. The rivals moved forward to their dressing spaces in preparation for an intense singing competition. The warning Mok-ha received from Bo-geol made Woo-hak aware that their father could reappear when she stepped into public attention, which would endanger their family's present equilibrium. At that moment, he saw Mok-ha dressed for the show, and her stunning beauty left him without words. Before he could voice something, a staff member sent Mok-ha to dress for rehearsal. Bo-geol had stopped attending his college-established community cleanup club, which he always participated in since its creation. Mok-ha developed doubts about Bo-geol as young Bo-geol, but he reacted with excitement. Bo-geol personally picked the blue ocean motif that served as the background for the stage. In middle school, Mok-ha admitted to Bo-geol that she had a dream to see the ocean from its distant side. The opening performance started when Mo-rae along with Ran-joo began their performance. Staff members agreed that Mo-rae would win because she enjoyed greater support from the audience. A member of staff came to Seo Mok-ha with a blank card after the competition finished to ask for her autograph. Young Bo-geol immediately took a card after observing the staff seek her autograph. He was about to speak with the girl before he ran into Kang Woo-hak. Woo-hak was furious. He couldn't believe that Bo-geol had allowed Mok-ha to become a singer. He reminded him of what they had both feared. If Mok-ha gained fame, their father would inevitably track them down. But Bo-geol had reached his breaking point. He had spent 15 years hiding the truth, lying to both his brother and Mok-ha. What he didn't realize was that Mok-ha had overheard everything. A sudden realization hit her. One of them had to be Bo-geol. What Mok-ha didn't know was that their father had already revealed the truth to Woo-hak years ago. Their mother had once considered changing their names for their safety, but if their father applied for residency, he would discover their identities. Their stepfather, who had been a government official, had come across a case of a missing family, a man, his wife, and 2 sons who were the same age as Woo-hak and Bo-geol. To protect them, their stepfather had borrowed that family's identities and given them new lives. In reality, after Woo-hak had brought Mok-ha home years ago, Bo-geol had pleaded with their mother to let her stay in the attic. Seeing how much her son cared, their mother agreed. It was the first time in a long while that Bo-geol had smiled. Now, Mok-ha anxiously peered out the window and spotted their biological father outside. Their worst fear had come true. After seeing Mok-ha perform, he had begun searching for his sons. Just as her phone rang with Bo-geol's call, she quickly hung up, panicking. She even took a step further and met their father in secret, determined to protect Woo-hak and Bo-geol. She insisted she had never met Bo-geol, but her father, once a police officer, could see through her lie. He maintained absolute faith that his best friend remained in the neighborhood. Mok-ha took a taxi to leave, yet struggled with sharp anxiety over everything that had transpired. Returning to the barbershop was impossible for her, and she lacked any destination to escape to. Ran-joo waited to deliver her debut gift to Mok-ha until Woo-hak and Bo-geol showed up. Because they had lost connection with her, Ran-joo checked her phone, at which point she discovered a message from Mok-ha. Through a message, Mok-ha stated she would abandon her singing career since she had realized the path was too tough to follow. The reality was that she decided to escape from her circumstances. Mok-ha chose a distant abandoned population center, which lay in the most isolated area far from the urban area. Her plan was to make herself invisible in this distant location, where their father would never locate her. Upon reaching the town, Mok-ha became aware of the island's deserted atmosphere from her days of survival difficulties. She searched for relief at a tiny eating place while wandering around. The establishment owner identified her instantly before requesting her signature. Mok-ha, penning the autograph, caused her eyes to become flooded with tears. She revealed her consumption of seagull eggs to the restaurant owner. The weight of guilt consumed her because she believed she stole the endeavor which properly belonged to Ran-joo. During her visit to the restaurant, Bo-geol showed up in an unexpected manner. The widespread attention following her successful performance made her a public figure who encountered constant photo-taking by those around her. Bo-geol discovered her location through posts from his social media account. The restaurant owner inquired about a potential boyfriend connection between Mok-ha and Bo-geol, so she hurriedly rejected the idea. Bo-geol discreetly replied to the question by saying they had shared a high school education together. A furious Mok-ha left the place, yet Bo-geol pursued her to reveal his true identity. Mok-ha had somewhat suspected this condition, but pretended otherwise to defend Bo-geol when needed. But Bo-geol's voice was firm, just like it had been all those years ago. Ever since Mok-ha had been rescued, he had wished he could be himself again. No longer able to hold back his emotions, he finally let go of his cold exterior. He had wanted to be the first to find her. Looking into her eyes, he softly said, "Thank you." He was grateful that she had survived. Overcome with emotion, he gently touched her face before pulling her into an embrace. Mok-ha, unable to hold back her tears, wrapped her arms around him. From a distance, Woo-hak saw them. His face fell, and a look of disappointment crossed his eyes. As the two brothers searched the town for Mok-ha, Woo-hak asked Bo-geol about his missing memories. Piece by piece, the past began coming together. Years ago, their father had injured Woo-hak while he was trying to protect his brother. While Woo-hak was in the hospital, their father had been assigned to work on an island. Their mother secretly gave Bo-geol some money and instructed him to escape the island when spring arrived. She promised she would change all their names and hide where their father couldn't find them. But the escape attempt had failed. Bo-geol had to wait until summer before trying again. When he finally did, he found a letter in a mailbox with their mother's new address. Following it, he was reunited with his family. By then, Woo-hak had awoken from his coma, but had lost his memory. Their mother had remarried, and their stepfather had worked to create a peaceful life for them. To keep Woo-hak from remembering their painful past, their mother and Bo-geol had chosen to remain silent about the truth. Bo-geol had escaped their father, but he had never truly escaped the weight of his guilt. For the next 15 years, he waited for Mok-ha, hoping she had survived. In the present, the brothers searched for Mok-ha. Woo-hak was determined. If he found her, he would persuade her to abandon her dream of being a singer for the sake of their family. He would convince her to run away even further. Bo-geol, on the other hand, told Mok-ha that if she wanted to protect them, she should become even more famous. If she could be a singer whose autograph people fought over, whose songs dominated the charts, she would have enough power to protect those she loved. He then handed her a card and asked her to sign it. Instead of returning home, the three of them took a detour, heading to a place they had often visited as a family. Wanting Mok-ha to experience happiness, Bo-geol called their parents and invited them to the campsite. Together, they set up tents, prepared food, and strung fairy lights on the trees. But Woo-hak felt like an outsider. While doing the dishes, he reminded Mok-ha that she no longer had her old name. Now, there was only Woo-hak and Bo-geol. He also asked if Bo-geol had ever liked Mok-ha back in middle school. Before Mok-ha could deny it, Bo-geol confessed, "I wouldn't have gone through all this trouble for someone I didn't care about." His words left Mok-ha blushing. That night, she played the guitar and sang for Bo-geol's family. It was the same song she had sung at her audition 15 years ago. As Bo-geol watched, it felt as though time had collapsed. The girl in front of him overlapped with the one from his past. When Bo-geol arrived at home, she examined the signature Mok-ha had written on his palm. She wrote those words to her biggest supporter. Meanwhile, their parents worried about Woo-hak. His parents believed that Woo-hak had romantic feelings towards Mok-ha. Woo-hak denied any romantic feelings toward Mok-ha, while explaining that he considered her only Bo-geol's friend. Woo-hak and Mok-ha made a visit to Ran-joo at later point. Woo-hak made the purchase of a cake as they traveled together. His lack of anticipatory response showed that he didn't expect such gratitude from her. The agency president Kang delivered positive news about Ran-joo's album performance, alongside numerous interested companies seeking Mok-ha as a business partner. The love in Mok-ha's heart belonged only to Ran-joo. Despite her own ideas, she sensed that Ran-joo held negative feelings toward her. She hurried to search for her friend. The invitation for a meeting arrived from President Lee at Mok-ha. He operated his business as an entrepreneur who identified her potential to achieve success and talent. The businessman planned to establish a contract with Ran-joo to build her professional music career. However, Mok-ha turned him down. Her one mission at this time was to help Ran-joo sell 20 million albums so she could make her artistic dream a reality. Mok-ha chose to postpone her artist ambitions, even though she wanted to become a singer who would release an album of her own. Unlike Mo-rae, Ran-joo failed to understand Mok-ha's steady loyalty. She told her directly that the same pattern would repeat itself, because Mok-ha would eventually let Ran-joo down, just as Mo-rae had done before. The conviction that she would always stay loyal to Ran-joo was the reason Mok-ha was certain she would never turn her back on her friend. Ran-joo shared her dissatisfaction toward Mok-ha with her mother in the nursing home. Mok-ha faced difficulties according to Jin-suk. She had trusted Mok-ha completely, even risking her own life for her. But now, Mok-ha had said she was giving up on her dream of being a singer. The thought left Ran-joo feeling cold and disappointed. As she sat in silence, she turned on her phone. There were multiple messages and calls. Producers and talent agencies had been trying to reach Mok-ha, but since they couldn't contact her directly, they had gone through Ran-joo instead. Ran-joo had once believed in nurturing Mok-ha's talent, but now she wasn't sure anymore. Would Mok-ha really throw away her dreams so easily? At that moment, the radio station happened to be replaying the first ever recorded conversation between Ran-joo and Mok-ha from years ago. Woo-hak listened, hearing the young and eager voice of Mok-ha from the past. It made him smile. Mok-ha, determined to reach Ran-joo, borrowed Woo-hak's phone to call her. This time, the call went through, but instead of Ran-joo, an elderly woman answered. To Mok-ha's confusion, the woman claimed to be Ran-joo. The phone suddenly rang again, and Mok-ha saw another call coming in. It was Ran-joo. That's when she realized that the elderly woman was actually Ran-joo's mother. She believed she was her daughter. Mok-ha gently led the woman to her room, letting her rest while she waited for Ran-joo to arrive. When Ran-joo rushed in, Mok-ha immediately apologized. She promised that she would never run away again. However, Ran-joo's response was distant. Her tone was indifferent as she reminded Mok-ha that nothing in life was absolute. If Mok-ha faced even greater difficulties in the future, she would probably run again. At that moment, Ran-joo made a decision. She called President Lee and told him she wanted to renegotiate the contract. She no longer cared about the sales goal. Mok-ha could see the disappointment in Ran-joo's eyes, not just in Mok-ha, but in herself. It made her heart sink. Meanwhile, Bo-geol was dealing with his own troubles. That night, he was haunted by another nightmare. In his dream, he saw his father staring at an old family photo. To protect his adopted family, his father had destroyed all traces of their past pictures. But even so, Bo-geol couldn't shake his anxiety. Consumed by fear, he made a bold decision. He returned to the island where he had once lived with his father. As soon as he arrived, the restaurant owner immediately informed his father about his return. But Bo-geol had expected this. He had purposely come back to the island to divert his father's attention. His father, however, wasn't fooled. He sent a message through the restaurant owner. "Don't come back here. I'll find you soon." Realizing that he could no longer run from this, Bo-geol gathered his courage and decided to confront his father directly. That night, he met him in person and, without hesitation, told him the truth. His father was overwhelmed with emotion upon seeing his son after so many years. But before Bo-geol could say more, his father suddenly snatched his phone. The screen showed that the recording app was on. Bo-geol had been trying to gather evidence against him, but Bo-geol was prepared for this. He pulled out a separate recording device he had hidden, capturing everything his father had said and done. His father lunged for it, but Bo-geol shoved him back, warning him that he wasn't being weak by not fighting back. He was making sure there was proof of his crimes. His father soon realized something else. Bo-geol had been the one who took Mok-ha away at the train station. His tone turned dark, but Bo-geol remained firm. If his father dared to go after Mok-ha, then he would no longer hesitate to expose everything. Bo-geol left, feeling a newfound sense of bravery. Later, when he returned home, Bo-geol deliberately poured alcohol on himself and pretended to be drunk to avoid suspicion. Woo-hak wasn't convinced, but let it go. The two brothers later found Mok-ha outside, dealing with two so-called fans. Seeing this, Bo-geol immediately stepped in to defend her. Mok-ha, worried about his safety, tried to shield his face, but he played along with his act, pretending to be drunk. Woo-hak also joined in, standing up for her. The two troublemakers threatened to post negative things about Mok-ha on social media, but Woo-hak pressured them into deleting the photos instead. Back at home, Mok-ha prepared ointment for Bo-geol's supposed injuries, but Woo-hak saw through his act. In a moment of honesty, Bo-geol admitted the truth. He had gone to see their father to gather evidence against him. He was certain that after their confrontation, his father wouldn't dare return. Woo-hak wasn't so sure. He believed their father would retaliate in an even worse way. Frustration boiled between the brothers, and Bo-geol finally admitted his true fear. He had no idea what their father was capable of when pushed into a corner. Mok-ha stepped forward and hugged him. She reassured him that his worst fears wouldn't come true. Though Bo-geol thought her words were just empty comfort, Mok-ha meant them. Ran-joo, however, had hardened her heart. She no longer cared about her goal of selling 20 million albums. That night, she packed her things and left the barbershop attic. As her manager picked her up, she quietly reflected on everything. She finally understood why Mo-rae had once replaced her at the top of the music industry. It wasn't because Mo-rae was more talented, it was because she had been ruthless. That was how the world worked. That was why Ran-joo had left Mok-ha behind. If Mok-ha continued prioritizing others over herself, she would lose the persistence needed to achieve her dreams. Later that night, Ran-joo visited President Lee's house. At the same time, her phone rang. It was Mok-ha. Mok-ha had made her decision. She was ready to sign the contract. She wasn't doing this because she was giving up on Ran-joo. She wanted to prove her strength. She wanted Ran-joo to see her determination. This was exactly what Ran-joo had been waiting for. Mok-ha hadn't betrayed her. After Yoon Ran-joo moved out, Seo Mok-ha often reminisced about their times together, how Ran-joo would apply lotion on her, and she would prepare meals for Ran-joo. These cherished memories lingered in Mok-ha's heart. Meanwhile, CEO Lee Seo-joon began arranging Mok-ha's contract. She was slated to debut with a song from the company's music library, as there were no lyricists or composers assigned to her. The staff knew that the library was filled with songs that no singer wanted, but Mok-ha trusted CEO Lee and believed she had been given a gem. Determined, she listened to all the songs before making her choice. Mok-ha was drawn to a song credited to Water Drop. She reached out, hoping to perform it, but Water Drop declined, expressing disdain for her. Upon arriving at the company, the manager accompanied her and cynically remarked that trainees were forever chasing after hopeless dreams. In his view, without exceptional talent, one should give up early. Mok-ha disagreed, which angered the manager. He revealed that he was Water Drop, a man with a sorrowful past. After a chance meeting with Ran-joo, he gave her one of his songs, which she appreciated. The manager's failure didn't deter Mok-ha. She revised his songs, refining them. Presenting her revisions, the manager angrily urged her to face reality and quit. Mok-ha remained steadfast, stating that if she were to give up, she wouldn't have survived 15 years alone on a deserted island. The manager questioned her about potential regret after another decade without success. Mok-ha laughed, acknowledging the possibility, but valuing the time spent pursuing her passion. Her sincere philosophy moved the manager, who finally agreed to let her sing his song. Seeing Mok-ha's revisions, he regretted his own surrender. Kang Bo-geol observed Mok-ha's dedication. and secretly approached Ran-joo, revealing his identity as Kang Bo-geol. He requested Ran-joo's help in refining the lyrics and music for Mok-ha. Ran-joo agreed, but Bo-geol couldn't disclose that she had done the revisions herself. Having failed to keep the manager persistent in the past, she was now determined to support Mok-ha. With Ran-joo's revisions, the song neared perfection debut day. Mok-ha sang confidently on stage, while the manager watched from the audience, tears streaming down his face. He realized he didn't hate Mok-ha but feared confronting his own cowardice. After the performance, Mok-ha sent a video link to Kang Woo-hak, asking for his support. Woo-hak wanted to respond, but considering his brother's close relationship with Mok-ha, refrained. That day, Woo-hak intended to dine with Mok-ha, only to find Bo-geol already eating breakfast with her, leaving him slightly disappointed. Woo-hak was investigating a car accident caused by a hornet sting, involving a classmate of Bo-geol and Mok-ha. They discovered the classmate's last known location was the security office where his father worked. Woo-hak suspected his father's involvement. Woo-hak alerted the police, but the case required transfer to the Criminal Investigation Department, delaying his father's arrest. Additionally, Woo-hak discovered his stepfather had lied about attending flower arrangement classes, as the flowers were store-bought. Amidst a drought, a car was found submerged in a river by two farmers. One evening, Bo-geol was en route home when Mok-ha texted, craving the buns they had previously enjoyed. Bo-geol happily turned back to buy them, but sensed something amiss. Activating his phone's camera, he saw his father at home, realizing his mother and Mok-ha were in danger. Earlier, while assisting at the hair salon, their biological father had appeared, causing their mother to tremble. Mok-ha discreetly texted Bo-geol to delay her return, then threatened to call the police. Their father remained unafraid, stating that involving the authorities would expose Bo-geol's false identity. He demanded his wife return home with their two sons. Mok-ha called the police, reporting that a man who had previously harassed her was back. Their father was unfazed, declaring he would report his wife's family at the station. At that moment, Woo-hak and their stepfather returned. Facing the threat, their stepfather didn't back down, confessing to recent events. Their father became enraged, and when Mok-ha tried to intervene, she was pushed away. Woo-hak rushed to protect her, striking his father. Amidst Mok-ha's desperate pleas, he stopped just in time. Bo-geol hurriedly returned as their father was taken away by the police. Unbeknownst to Seo Mok-ha, Kang Woo-hak observed her with a particular interest. He mentioned his past experience as a legal reporter, noting the challenges in obtaining pardons for identity theft. The only solution now was to demonstrate that their father had consistently mistreated his wife and two sons. They required an external witness who had suffered under him. Such testimony could influence the judge's sentencing. Unfortunately, the friend injured by their father remained unconscious in the hospital, and despite his wife's plea for the police to arrest the assailant, the available dash cam footage was insufficient. The authorities could only hope for the victim's recovery to obtain a statement. Meanwhile, Mok-ha delved into law books, aiming to assist Bo-geol's brothers. At that moment, Ran-joo called, requesting a meeting. Mok-ha hurried to see her. In front of Mok-ha, Ran-joo shared her story. Years prior, President Lee and her mother had consulted a fortune teller to foresee Ran-joo's potential fame. The fortune teller inquired how much Ran-joo was willing to pay for a necklace, symbolizing her future success. Ran-joo declared she would spend all her current and future earnings to acquire it. The fortune teller laughed, predicting Ran-joo's rise to fame, recognizing that only those with unwavering determination can overcome challenges and persist. Ran-joo's purpose in meeting Mok-ha was to assess her resolve. If Mok-ha possessed such strength, Ran-joo would take charge of producing her album. However, the condition was that Mok-ha must sever ties with Bo-geol's family, as Ran-joo perceived them as Mok-ha's vulnerability. To achieve her dream, Mok-ha needed to eliminate this weakness. Faced with this ultimatum, Mok-ha hesitated, unable to respond immediately. Unbeknownst to her, Ran-joo had also contacted Bo-geol, who was outside, overhearing their conversation. Ran-joo gave Mok-ha a day to decide and handed her a necklace symbolizing Bo-geol. Reflecting on his past with Mok-ha, Bo-geol made a swift decision. He rented a new apartment, stocked it with essentials, and cleaned it meticulously. Simultaneously, Mok-ha grappled with her choice. After surviving on a deserted island, she had vowed to pursue her desires daily. With this conviction, she packed her belongings, initially leaving behind shoes gifted by Kang Woo-hak 15 years ago, symbolizing her intent to move forward without clinging to the past. As she prepared to leave, Bo-geol arrived, noticing her packed bags. Mok-ha casually mentioned she was departing to chase her future. Without protest, Bo-geol handed her an umbrella and drove her to the new apartment he had prepared since her rescue. Seeing her drenched from the rain, he offered her a towel, having thoughtfully arranged everything in the apartment. This gesture deeply moved Mok-ha, torn between gratitude and the pain of leaving him. Bo-geol urged Mok-ha to pursue her dreams without hesitation, assuring her not to worry about his family. He promised that if she ever felt her dreams were unattainable, she could return to him. Handing her the necklace, he departed, leaving Mok-ha overwhelmed with emotion. After composing herself, she called Ran-joo, affirming her commitment to her dream. Bo-geol informed his family of Mok-ha's departure, instructing them not to contact her to prevent any hindrance to her aspirations. His brother's insistence angered Woo-hak, who retreated to Mok-ha's former room, now empty except for a lighter, a memento from when he had first lit a candle for her, symbolizing his long-suppressed feelings. Mok-ha dedicated herself to her dream, with Ran-joo, honoring her promise by personally producing Mok-ha's album, even sacrificing her company shares. In the ensuing days, Bo-geol and Woo-hak resigned from their positions, and the family cooperated with the ongoing police investigation. Occasionally, Mok-ha and Bo-geol would cross paths on the streets, their connection lingering in their dreams. Despite the challenges, Ran-joo vowed to make Mok-ha the best singer possible. However, the crisis escalated when news broke that Ran-joo was supporting the newcomer Mok-ha instead of securing company shares. President Lee planned a press conference, prompting Ran-joo to draft a statement, intending to confess the truth and mitigate the situation with an apology. Mok-ha also wished to reveal her involvement, but Ran-joo objected, fearing it would harm Mok-ha's burgeoning career. Determined, Mok-ha returned the necklace to Ran-joo, asserting that she wouldn't abandon her dream for anyone. Ran-joo resolved to hold the press conference alone, but Mok-ha insisted on standing by her, despite not knowing how to begin her statement. At that moment, Woo-hak messaged her, mentioning he was dining alone. Moved, Mok-ha joined him, surprised to find he had prepared potential questions and answers for the upcoming press conference, warning her of possible scenarios. As the press conference approached, President Lee attempted to persuade Mok-ha to release an album, suggesting she distance herself from Ran-joo for the sake of her career. Mok-ha remained steadfast, believing it was better to confront the truth bravely. During the conference, Ran-joo humbly apologized, admitting she had agreed to receive half of the company shares if she sold over 20 million albums and had participated in the TV show for that reason, even lip-syncing on stage. Mok-ha confessed that she had encouraged Ran-joo, hoping her idol would continue to sing and dominate the charts. 15 years prior, President Lee lacked the means to establish his company. However, he remained resolute, asserting that Yoon Ran-joo's declining career had paved the way for the company's current success. Feeling disheartened, Ran-joo chose to depart from President Lee's residence. As she descended, her manager and Seo Mok-ha awaited her. On their journey, Ran-joo received an urgent call from her mother's nurse, prompting her to rush to her mother's side. Her mother, afflicted with Alzheimer's, mistook Ran-joo for herself, leaving Ran-joo bewildered. Mok-ha elucidated that years ago, Ran-joo's mother had aspired to be a singer, adopting the stage name Yoon Ran-joo. This revelation made Ran-joo realize that her mother had projected her unfulfilled dreams onto her. Confronting her mother anew, Ran-joo was overwhelmed with emotion. Meanwhile, Kang Woo-hak and Kang Bo-geol grappled with their own predicaments. Woo-hak confronted Bo-geol about not contacting Mok-ha, but Bo-geol reminded him of his vow to sever ties during the investigation. In a clandestine meeting on the 3rd floor of their home, Woo-hak confided in Mok-ha about the potential legal repercussions their family faced. Bo-geol interrupted, offering to escort Mok-ha home. During the ride, Bo-geol expressed his wish for Mok-ha to avoid their household, but she retorted, "Like you, no one in their right mind would remember or care about someone they didn't like for 15 years. My feelings for you from 15 years ago remain unchanged." She vowed to stand by Bo-geol, irrespective of the investigation's outcome. The day of the prosecutor's interrogation arrived, enveloping Bo-geol's family in anxiety. Their biological father lamented before the prosecutor, portraying himself as a victim and accusing Woo-hak of attempted assault, citing home security footage as evidence. Conversely, their stepfather defended Woo-hak, clarifying that Woo-hak's actions were protective aiming to shield him from harm. The perceptive prosecutor highlighted the irony of their biological father's desire for familial reconciliation, while simultaneously suing them. During the questioning of Bo-geol and Woo-hak, their biological father revealed he had purchased life insurance policies for them, with payouts exceeding $100 million in the event of his death. The prosecutor's inquiry was interrupted by news that the insurance agent, a high school acquaintance of Bo-geol, had emerged from a 4-month coma following a suspicious accident after meeting their father. The agent testified about threats and a deliberate hornet attack orchestrated by their father. When questioned about their stepfather's identity deception, Bo-geol, emboldened by Mok-ha's support, confessed, explaining it was a desperate measure to protect their family in the absence of legal safeguards 15 years prior. Following the interrogation, the family exited into a torrential downpour. As Bo-geol sought to purchase an umbrella, Mok-ha appeared, offering hers and commending the family's unity. Their mother, noticing her estranged husband drenched, handed him the umbrella, symbolizing a complex blend of duty and lingering affection. In preparation for Mok-ha's album, Ran-joo secured a coveted studio space. Reflecting on a song her mother once sang, Ran-joo, with Mok-ha's assistance, reconstructed the forgotten lyrics. Performing the song in the studio, Ran-joo honored her mother's unrealized aspirations. The manager disseminated the performance footage to the press, redirecting public attention from scandal to Ran-joo's artistry. Tragically, Ran-joo's mother passed away shortly after. While sorting through her belongings, Ran-joo discovered a locked drawer containing documents revealing her album's substantial sales in Japan, entitling her to company shares long ago, unbeknownst to her. Simultaneously, Bo-geol's family received favorable news from the prosecutor's office. Due to insufficient evidence, charges were dropped. Bo-geol shared the news with Mok-ha, who rushed to him. They embraced and kissed, celebrating the reprieve. That evening, the family gathered, joined by 2 high school friends, vowing to maintain their bond. While returning with a celebratory cake, their stepfather was suddenly attacked by their biological father, resulting in severe injuries. The cake, inscribed with "Forever loving my family," lay ruined, symbolizing shattered peace. The stepfather underwent critical surgery, his survival uncertain. Their biological father, in his final act, left a will exploiting legal technicalities to maintain control over the family, causing Bo-geol profound anguish. The family's hope hinged on their stepfather's recovery to legitimize their familial bonds legally. As their stepfather remained comatose, Bo-geol and Woo-hak kept vigil, expressing their need for his presence. Mok-ha conveyed to him that he had exemplified true fatherhood. Their mother, deeply affected, reflected on their unconventional yet profound love, evidenced by a stage wedding photo that belied their genuine connection. Miraculously, their stepfather regained consciousness, reaffirming his commitment to his wife and sons. They legally formalized their family ties, eager to create new memories together. With their biological father's death, his oppressive influence dissipated. Resuming their lives, Kang Bo-geol and Kang Woo-hak reclaimed their original last names, leaving behind the shadow of their biological father. Their parents, now legally married, prepared to take hairstyling certification exams, eager to start anew. Woo-hak, deeply affected by the near loss of his stepfather, became more expressive, embracing his family whenever he returned home. He realized that suppressing emotions could lead to regrets, and he vowed never to hold back his feelings again. Woo-hak approached Seo Mok-ha. She playfully referred to him as brother, but he rejected the title immediately. He didn't want to be seen as just a sibling figure in her life. At that moment, Bo-geol arrived at a restaurant where his former co-workers had gathered for a celebration. Spotting Mok-ha laughing with Woo-hak, jealousy flickered across his face. Unable to suppress his emotions, he left shortly after eating. Meanwhile, Mok-ha, concerned about the brothers' financial situation, handed Woo-hak some money, assuming they were still struggling. She specifically told him to use it to help Bo-geol pay his rent, as he had once done for her. This revelation startled Woo-hak. He hadn't realized how much Bo-geol had always been looking after Mok-ha, even before they found her on the deserted island. That night, Woo-hak confronted his brother. He asked whether Bo-geol truly believed that finding Mok-ha on that island was a coincidence. Bo-geol, holding Mok-ha's signature in his hand, finally revealed the truth. Every week for years, he had gone to Seoul Station, searching for her. He joined the Navy, volunteered for missions on remote islands, and never stopped looking. Hearing his brother's confession, Woo-hak sighed. He realized that No matter how much he cared for Mok-ha, Bo-geol had always been one step ahead. Woo-hak advised Bo-geol, "Don't just silently yield. Sometimes you need to learn how to express yourself in front of the people you like." Shortly after the family barbershop reopened, Seo Mok-ha assisted in tidying up the establishment. Neighbors who had previously misunderstood the family came bearing gifts, signaling a positive turn in their lives. That evening, under a canopy of stars, Mok-ha composed lyrics and melodies. Bo-geol, recalling his brother's counsel, inquired of Mok-ha, "Do you think it was a coincidence that I found you on the deserted island?" Mok-ha responded with a gentle smile, aware that her rescue was no mere chance. Bo-geol had exerted considerable effort to locate her. She was cognizant of all that Bo-geol had undertaken on her behalf. Mok-ha's diary lay beside Bo-geol, who eagerly picked it up, intent on reading its contents. This intimate moment was inadvertently witnessed by Woo-hak, who felt a pang of sadness. Nevertheless, he chose not to disclose his feelings to Mok-ha, prioritizing his younger brother's happiness over his own. Beneath the starlit sky, Mok-ha nestled into Bo-geol's embrace, resolving that henceforth, as Mok-ha's album neared its release, CEO Lee proposed adjusting one of her songs in collaboration with Ran-joo. Ran-joo reacted with anger and sought an explanation from CEO Lee. CEO Lee elucidated that it was Ran-joo's mother who had voided the document, desiring her daughter to continue as a singer rather than transition into a managerial role. He further justified his decision to adjust the song, asserting it was a sound judgment befitting the company's president. He believed that Mok-ha and Ran-joo could each showcase their unique styles. CEO Lee even wagered with Ran-joo, stating that if Mok-ha's revised song failed to top the charts, he would relinquish his shares and resign as president. To Ran-joo's astonishment, Mok-ha embraced the revised song, and Ran-joo chose to respect her decision. Ultimately, Mok-ha released her debut album, with the collaborative track topping the charts upon its release. Their mother proudly posed before a poster of Mok-ha. The manager proactively requested a transfer to Mok-ha's team, assuming the role of her manager. Ran-joo experienced some discontent, noting that the altered song consistently occupied the top chart position. She pondered that, had it remained unchanged, perhaps Mok-ha wouldn't have achieved such success. However, Mok-ha maintained an optimistic outlook. To Ran-joo's surprise, Mok-ha even organized an event, further demonstrating her positive demeanor. The surprise deepened when Mok-ha participated in the village's anniversary celebration. Before the festivities commenced, Ran-joo and the manager procured numerous blue balloons. As they inflated the balloons, Bo-geol and Woo-hak joined in to assist. They distributed the balloons to attendees, aiming to support Mok-ha wholeheartedly. Ran-joo harbored lingering reservations toward Mok-ha. In response, Mok-ha shared her ordeal on the deserted island. After being stranded, she had nearly lost the will to live. However, consuming ramen from a cooler rekindled her survival instinct. She continually reminded herself, "I just have to live for another 5 minutes." To occupy those 5-minute intervals, Mok-ha focused on sunlight filtering through the leaves, befriended seagulls. Gradually, 5 minutes turned into 50, and time passed unnoticed. Eventually, Mok-ha was rescued by an unmanned drone. This experience taught her that, instead of succumbing to worry, it's better to engage in meaningful actions in the present and sing the songs one is meant to sing. With this straightforward and heartfelt life philosophy, Mok-ha took the stage at the anniversary celebration. Below, a sea of blue balloons bobbed amidst a crowd of her fans, with Bo-geol and Woo-hak cheering her on. Mok-ha sang with passion, embodying her aspirations for the future. Her song clinched the title of Song of the Year, propelling her onto grander stages and establishing her as the newest luminary in the music scene. Behind the scenes, Bo-geol adjusted the camera angles, capturing her performance. In the ensuing days, Mok-ha frequently appeared in photographs with Bo-geol's family. Her burgeoning career and personal relationships flourished simultaneously, marking significant strides toward her dreams. The series concludes here. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more exciting films. See you next time.